and welcome to How to Pass the Magistrate First Interview. My name is Richard McMunn, and for the duration of this particular presentation I'm going to teach you how to prepare effectively for the Magistrate First Interview. And I want to make you fully aware from the offset that there are in fact two interviews in order to become a magistrate, and this presentation will predominantly focus on the first interview. I recommend that you use this presentation in association with my How to Become a Magistrate guide or book, because there's lots of tips, additional tips in there that will help you to get the most out of your preparation. Now, the majority of you will be aware that being a magistrate is a voluntary role. Some people believe that this works in their favour and the interview is a lot easier because it's a voluntary role. That is not the case. I actually think it's a lot harder than going for a traditional job interview where you're going to be paid for a role, because for that exact reason you're not going to be paid in order to become a magistrate. Yes, you will receive your travelling expenses and other certain expenses, but you need to demonstrate to the panel that you can provide a high level of commitment. And it basically falls down to demonstrating that you have the 6 key qualities required to become a magistrate, and I'll talk about those in a little while. But basically the first magistrate interview follows the initial application form completion. So applicants whose paperwork is in order and who are not automatically disqualified through not meeting the minimum eligibility requirements will often receive a first interview as a matter of course. Now, it is great news if you get invited along to the first interview stage, but please bear that in mind, that basically if your paperwork is in order and everything's fine and you're not automatically disqualified, you'll probably get invited along to the first interview. Some people say to me, how long will it be from the time of submitting my application form? Well, obviously this can very much depend on the level of recruitment within your particular area, and the local advisory committee will decide on that, how often they need magistrates. But you could be waiting quite a long time. You could be waiting months and months before you go along to the first interview. Now, the first interview usually lasts for about half an hour to 40 minutes, 45 minutes, and obviously it will depend on your responses to the questions, basically how long the interview will last. So you'll have to be highly focused on what is likely to be covered. Now, the information that I'll provide you with during this video presentation, I'm not saying this is exactly the format that it will follow and exactly these are the questions that you will get asked, but if you follow the information that I provide you with, it will help you to really thoroughly prepare for the interview. Now, the first interview will be held in a public building, and it's often in a courthouse, but not always, so bear that in mind. And the panel comprises of 3 or sometimes 2 members, one of whom will usually be a non-magistrate, so the latter may come at matters from a different angle from what the magistrate members would. And that is obviously to provide a good level of consistency in order to be fair, because the panel will understand that you're not a magistrate, but they are keen to see whether you can demonstrate the key qualities required to become a magistrate, and also to see what your views and opinions are. As I'm sure you're aware, being a magistrate is a highly responsible role, okay, a highly responsible role in society. Now, he or she will be an ordinary member of the public, just as you are, and may ask more general questions of the kind that concern ordinary people, especially in and around the town, city or rural area where you live or work. And I want to state that from the offset, that you need to have an understanding of what's going on within your community. And you can do that by either being part of community groups, or even if it's just buying your local weekly newspaper and reading the articles, finding out what's actually going on in your area, and not just about people who've been sentenced in court or any crimes that are committed, but also what's actually going on in the area. What are people concerned about? Any differing trends in the area? And sometimes you can find out this kind of information by visiting your local police force's website and also the fire service website. I used to be in the fire service. I spent 17 years in there, and I can remember on our website we used to provide people with information about the types of fires that used to occur. So if there was many deliberate fires, and also the different areas that there were many fires actually taking place, or different incidents. So if you went on like your local police force website, you could find out a lot about what's going on in the local communities, because as a magistrate you're going to have an understanding of this, and um, how your local area is affected. Now, you can only really prepare for this by being alive to the key issues and debates that are current in your own community and society in general. So make sure you've got a pen with you and write down these important tips. You need to find out as much as possible about your community. And I mentioned earlier on about being part of community groups. There's nothing wrong with that. That would be a good thing, especially to demonstrate at the interview. You're going to say that you want to be a magistrate, I assume, to contribute to society and to community, to make a positive impact. And of course they're going to come back to your interview and say, well, we hear that all the time, so why in particular do you want to carry out this volunteer role? And you could say, well, I've been a member of a community group for a long time now, and I've found out a lot of things that are going on in my area, and I want to be more a part of it. So I would certainly recommend considering some kind of voluntary role in your community, even if that meant you working at a local charity shop for a couple of hours a week, giving up your time, maybe working at the local community centre. I live in Maidstone, and we've got a fantastic community centre here where people can go along and they can get help and support in the community, and a lot of people go there to volunteer their time and to help out. So that would be a good way of finding out about your local community. So the first interview will concentrate on 4 main aspects: checking, updating and exploring further what was on your original application form. So if you haven't applied yet to become a magistrate and you intend to submit an application, make sure you keep a copy of it, and also make sure that you follow religiously the guidance notes that come with the form. So you need to make sure that you are eligible first of all, and you meet all of the minimum eligibility requirements. They will also put the good character and background question fairly early on, so how, finding out about what your character is like, and also what your background is like during the first interview. We'll look at the key qualities required to become a magistrate in a second. Concentrating on matters such as criminal justice issues and your pre-interview court visits or observations. So you need to go along to a court sitting. One is no good. You need to go, I would recommend at the very least 2 or 3 court visits and observations, and you can go along to your local court, introduce yourself to the clerk and say, look, I'm thinking of applying to become a magistrate. I would like to sit at the back and just observe, and take some some paper in there and a pen or pencil, and start taking notes about what goes on in the court. Listen to the decisions that are made by the magistrates, and write down your feelings of those decisions and the sentences that are passed down to those people who are guilty. Have a look at the different people who work in the court environment, and you could also even sketch whilst you're in there sort of where people sit in the magistrate's court, because you will get asked the question about the court visits, and the more information you can provide to the interview panel, then the better. So you have to go along, if you want to have a chance of passing this interview, go along to a number of court visits and observations. I would recommend, if you've got the time, to go along to 2 or 3 different courts, okay, in your county, and have a look what goes on and see how consistent it is, and write down the differences between the sittings and what goes on, and also try and witness a number of different court sittings. So let's assume somebody has been accused of drink driving, or maybe a speeding offence, maybe going to visit somebody who's been accused of theft, and have a look at a different variety, get a good diverse knowledge of different court sittings, because that will basically improve your depth of knowledge for when you go to the interview, because you want to have something to talk about. The 2 demonstrated or not demonstrated key qualities of commitment and reliability and good character. So that's the different things that will be covered during the particular interview. So what I'm going to do now is just talk through these essential qualities, because there are 6 key qualities. These are regarded as vital if you are to perform successfully in the role of a magistrate. Doesn't matter how or where you develop the qualities. It could be through your current or previous employment, involvement in community or voluntary activities, public appointments, etc., and even family life or academic study. The most important thing is that you can demonstrate these in the selection process, and if you are appointed, apply them to the role, because as I've mentioned, it really is a highly responsible role. So let's have a look at them. Good character. To have personal integrity and enjoy the respect and trust of other people. Okay, so that's the first important quality. And they're going to do that during the interview by asking you different questions, which I'll come on to in a second, but just generally getting a feel for what you're like as a person, seeing what your views are. You know, it says there about enjoying the respect and trust of other people. When you sit on a magistrate's bench, there will normally be 3 people. Okay, and you'll have to come up with a majority decision between you before, you know, based on the situation that you're being presented with, and if you believe somebody's guilty or not guilty, you'll have to decide on a majority basis, and that means respecting other people's decisions as well, and also trusting other people. So you have to trust other people in the court, because as a magistrate, you're, you know, most likely not going to have legal qualifications. You're not going to be highly conversant in the use of law. Therefore, you have to put your trust in the legal clerk who's going to be there to advise you. Okay, so some people struggle to do that, to listen to other people's opinions, because being a magistrate is not about waving the stick and being heavy-handed all of the time. It's about listening and reasoning and also challenging your own prejudices. So let's assume that somebody is in front of you who has been accused of speeding, and they've been travelling too fast, they've caused an accident, nobody's hurt but they've caused an accident, and they're up in front of you for dangerous driving, and it's a young lad who's 18. You know, how are you going to, what's your first impressions of that? Because I'll guarantee that some people in society would automatically think he's a young lad, a boy racer, he's 18, he's a teenager, he's driving, not much experience, therefore he must be guilty. You can't be like that as a magistrate. Okay, you have to be totally independent. You have to look at all of the facts of the case and take into consideration all of the different circumstances. So just because you have preconceived ideas, perhaps, and we all do them, you know, we all do have preconceived ideas about different situations and people, but it's understanding that you have them and being able to control your emotions and you know, the decisions that you make, and you have to base them on the facts of the case. So understanding and communication, to be able to understand documents, identify relevant facts, follow evidence and communicate effectively. Okay, so that's another key quality. Social awareness, to appreciate and accept the rule of law. So sometimes we see in the local media and the newspapers some stories are produced about somebody has committed a crime and they've received a sentence which on the surface may appear to be extremely lenient, and the papers are, you know, in uproar about it, and people in the community are, and that is understanding, but you have to follow evidence and communicate effectively, but also accept the rule of the law, because there are sentencing guidelines, okay, that you have to follow as a magistrate. You can't just hand out a sentence that you believe is appropriate because of what your feelings are, but it's based on sentencing guidelines. You have to be able to follow the rule of the law and accept it. Maturity and sound temperament, to have an awareness and understanding of people and sense of fairness. Okay, so understanding of people and a sense of fairness, because just because you function and operate in a certain manner doesn't mean to say that other people do. Okay, the community is extremely diverse in nature. People live in our society with different cultures, different backgrounds, different upbringings, and you have to understand that. You have to have sound judgment to be able to think logically, weigh arguments and reach a sound decision based on the facts and information of the case. And commitment and reliability, to be committed to serving the community, willing to undergo training and to be in sufficiently good health to undertake your duties on a regular basis. Because some people feel that, yes, I want to be a magistrate, and when it actually comes to it and they're going along to do their sittings per year, the minimum number of sittings, it can be quite tedious. Well, the local advisory committee don't want to put you in the role and then train you up only for you to turn around in a few months to say, actually, this is not for me. And that is why they are very strict during the interview to find out whether you can actually be reliable and meet that minimum level of commitment. So that's the qualities that you really need to demonstrate. So let's have a look at some interview questions, and I stress these are not guaranteed to be the ones, but I recommend that you prepare for these and any others that you believe you may get asked during the interview. So what were your first impressions when you did your course observations? So what did you actually see? And they're asking there specifically about your first impressions when you went in there. How formal was it? Were you surprised at anything in the court? And you can write these down when you go along to your sit-ins. So take these questions with you and start, feeding in the answers before you actually go. What's your first impressions of the magistrate's bench, of the people that were in the room, of the whole process, and be honest about it, okay? Because being a magistrate is all about being honest as well. That's one of the key qualities, having honesty and integrity. So yes, it's important to say certain things during the interview, but you have to be honest, okay, because they will respect that. What sort of cases did you see? And that's why I said to you earlier about trying to look at a variety of different scenarios. Okay, so what sort of cases did you see? So, if you can get 3 or 4 different cases and have something to talk about, how diverse they were. Did anything surprise you? It might be that the sentence surprised you, but I would recommend, perhaps it's not essential, but going on the sentencing guidelines website. If you go into a search engine like Google or something like that and just type in sentencing guidelines, then there is a website where the sentencing guidelines are actually issued, so you can read them and just have a look through them. You don't have to know them inside and out, but it would be good to be aware of them. What was your view of the decisions the magistrates made and the reasons they gave for their decisions? And again, remember that one of the qualities is appreciating and accepting the rule of law. There will be in any incident a set of, or in most incidents, a set of mitigating circumstances. So, a mitigating circumstance could be, let's say, somebody speeding, and a mitigating circumstance is that they were rushing because they were going to see their mother who was ill in hospital. That could be a mitigating circumstance. It's a reason why somebody was breaking the law, and the magistrates may take that into consideration when deciding on the level of sentencing. Okay, what impression did you form of the roles of all of the other main players in the courtroom? And that's why I say to you, when you go there, write down a sketch of the people in the room and put different titles to the people who are in there. You will have seen that centrally these are the defendant, the court legal advisor, the Crown prosecutor, defence solicitors, probation officers, police officers, prison escorts, etc., the witnesses and the press. So what is your impression? I remember when I've gone in to a sitting before into a courtroom, I can remember being surprised because I wasn't aware at the time that somebody would receive a third of their sentence off through an early guilty plea, and that surprised me that someone could get so much off. But and that would be okay to talk about that during the interview. What do you think are the main crime problems in your area or in the country? So look at it from an area basis and also in the country, and I've already alluded to the different ways that you can find out that kind of information. Now obviously things that are predominant at the moment when I'm creating this presentation is that in some areas we have a binge drinking culture. A lot of cheap alcohol is available, and it encourages people to drink, especially younger people, to drink lots. And if you look at the crime in your area, I would probably, not guarantee, but could imagine, especially if you live in an urban area, is that you've got more problems that are focused around crimes that are committed following the consumption of alcohol, whether that's fighting, whether it's theft, criminal damage, etc. Okay, so have a look at the main crime problems in your area. What factors do you think cause people to commit offences? Well, only you will have a view on that. My view, my personal view, is that it's generally down to a lack of understanding of what actually happens when they commit these crimes, and they have a lack of understanding of how their crime affects other people, and also a lack of education. Some people aren't aware that if they commit a crime, this is what actually happens, and they're also not aware of the circumstances of what can happen to them, because the vast majority of people who commit a crime, if they find themselves up in court, then they are absolutely devastated, they are shocked, they are upset, they're remorseful, they're regrettable. If they had that feeling before they committed a crime, then the majority of people wouldn't commit a crime. Okay, so it's a lack of understanding, but also different factors may be the fact that some people just don't have any money, okay, and they're desperate for money. It might be you know, a love crime or a hate crime, that kind of thing. So think about the different factors that cause people, that drive people to commit offences, because it's having an understanding of how people function and the circumstances that they are in. What are your views on the use of recreational drugs? And at the moment there's a lot of talk in the press about people petitioning for the decriminalisation of the use of recreational drugs, and it's okay to have a view and opinion on these. My own personal view and opinion is that they shouldn't be decriminalised, and because my personal view is that the recreational use of drugs can lead to you know, to use of harder drugs, to Class A drugs, and that can obviously lead to a major problem. But that's my own personal view. Just a point on this: when you do go to the interview, even though it is a formal affair, the interview panel may challenge you on certain you know, responses that you give to the questions. If you think about what it's like to be a magistrate, you're going to be working with other magistrates, and you're going to be challenged on times about your decision and your decision on making a sentence, and you have to accept that there are other people who will have opinions. Now, you don't want to sit there during the interview and say, well, actually, I don't agree with you, that's wrong. But you can say, well, you know, my own personal view is this, but I respect your decision. You know, you've got a lot of experience, and I would be open to my view being changed. You know, that kind of thing. That's what they're looking for, is somebody who is flexible, not just to fit in with them, but to be open and willing to listen to other people. That's important. What particular factors do you think might give rise to youth crime? Again, it might be a lack of education, but also maybe a lack of them not feeling supported or not feeling wanted. Okay, that can be the case with some young people. They may feel that they don't have any prospects. You know, no future prospects, especially at the moment when unemployment is so high. People think, what is the point? And that is a factor that can drive people to it. Have you or somebody very close to you ever been the victim of a crime? And if so, what was it and how did you feel about it? So again, they're looking to see whether you can understand what it's like to be a victim of crime. Did your views change, and if so, how, when you learned more about the defendants you saw appearing in court? Remember here that people appearing before the magistrates are innocent unless and until proved guilty, so they only become offenders even when they are convicted and are about to be sentenced. If the situation arises, try to show that you understand this important difference. And I would learn that thing that I've created there, or that I've put down, you know, and I'd say that during the interviews, that people are innocent until proved guilty, and they're not offenders until they're about to be sentenced. Okay, so my own personal view, if I was going to become a magistrate, I would say that my view of people would be that everybody is innocent. Okay, it doesn't matter how they look, what their background is, it really does not matter. Okay, because I'm like that. I don't look at people and think, oh, you're from a different background, and I just get on with everybody and speak to everybody. Okay, but for some people that might be a problem, and you have to ask yourself, would that be a problem for you? And it goes back to what I mentioned earlier on about the 18-year-old boy who some people would believe is a boy racer, and he's up there in court on a speeding charge and causing, you know, damage by driving, you know, for dangerous driving. How would you feel about that? Would you automatically think, oh, this person must be guilty? Well, if that's the case, then you maybe should reconsider about becoming a magistrate. You have to be able to challenge your own perceptions and your own views. What is the best way to stop people offending in the first place and re-offending when sentenced? And again, this will be your own choice or your own preference of how you think that can be achieved. But again, I always believe that if people could understand what the consequences are if they were to commit a crime, then they probably wouldn't do it in the first place. Okay, and I'm not saying that we should go and you know, take people at school round to a prison cell and show them, but if we did that kind of thing, this is my own personal view, people may actually think twice, because if you've seen a prison cell and you understood that you'd have to spend many hours a day in there if you committed a serious crime and was sentenced to a custodial sentence, then people would probably think twice about doing it. In terms of reoffending, well, that's a difficult one. It's about giving people support once they've had their sentence and they've completed their sentence, ongoing support and education. But you have a think about that question. What is your understanding of the basic and wider commitments of being a magistrate? So you obviously have to understand what the level of commitment is, all of the sittings that you have to do, and obviously the wider commitments, which is the training, the ongoing training, maybe carrying out appraisals as well, and in the future you may want to become an appraisee. How do you see yourself organising your life to meet those commitments? Well, I would say one thing: you need to have the support of your employer. If you are still employed, you might be retired. Think about the support of your family. Think about your social life. Maybe you have some commitments at the moment and you feel to yourself, well, actually, can I actually fit this time in? So you need to demonstrate to them that you are an organised person. You keep a up-to-date planner, an organiser, and your diary would always be left free for those particular dates. Why do you want to become a magistrate? That's a good question. If it was me who was going along, my own reasons why I'd want to become a magistrate is that I personally have spent a lot of time working in the community. I know that there are problems that go on in the community, and having worked with people of all different backgrounds and being a voluntary member in different services before, I feel that I would like to take that step further and make a bigger contribution to my community by becoming a magistrate. And I'm fully aware of the different levels of commitment that are required. You'll have your own reasons why you want to become a magistrate. In terms of status, because some people like the status of being a magistrate, if it was me, I wouldn't say that during the interview. If you want to volunteer a contribution to society, why do you want to do it in this particular way? And that would help if you have volunteered in society in any other form or manner. Okay, so let's say that you've already worked at a charity shop or at a community centre, then you could say that it's a natural progression for me. Another reason why I'd personally want to become a magistrate is that I would like to improve my communication skills, my patient skills, my ability to work with other people, because it's a developmental role. You don't just go into magistrate role and start straight away and become perfect at it. Okay, you'd obviously have to have a lot of training, coaching and development, so it might be a personal development reason too. What were the reactions of your family and employer when you said you were applying? So they just want to get a gauge to see whether your employer will support you, and also your family. And if that was me, I would say that, well, even though I've discussed it with my partner and my immediate family, I haven't discussed it with my wider family, because it's not something that I'd want to discuss with a lot of people. I understand that there's a level of confidentiality with the role, that I can't go around discussing cases, and therefore I don't want to leave myself open for people asking me about different cases. And the more people that I told, then therefore more people are likely to ask me questions, and I wouldn't disclose anything that was confidential. What would you get personally from being a magistrate? I know if I was doing it, I'd get an increased level of confidence, communication skills, being patient and understanding for people and the situations, and also about learning about the community that I'm living in. What would you bring to the role? Well, you'll have to think about the different kind of qualities that you've got to bring to the role. Think about the different experiences that you've got. Sound judgment, a good temperament, being able to remain calm under pressure, a good level of communication, listening to other people, a level of commitment. What do you think the downsides might be of being a magistrate? Well, that will depend on you. I wouldn't say that the level of commitment is a downside, because you already know about this. Yes, you might have to commit, but the downsides might be I don't know, for you personally, that you might have to reorganize your own personal and professional life, but for me there wouldn't be any downsides. Do you think that the media is always right about crime? That's a good question. My own personal opinion of that is that no, I don't think they are always right about crime. The media are extremely helpful in many aspects in terms of crime, and we have seen the media help local police forces sometimes to find a perpetrator, to find a criminal, you know, and they can work extremely well. But there are certain cases when perhaps the media might not be so helpful. I can understand why the media and certain newspapers would print stories that relate to somebody who's received a sentence, and the newspaper says that magistrates have handed down a really lenient sentence. But when I read that, I always try and think about the sentencing guidelines and understand that, you know, the magistrates have to look at all the facts and all the evidence, and sometimes the media might not publish all of the facts. They might not publish all of the mitigating circumstances. Okay, so just think about that one. So that's a number of questions that I would recommend you prepare for the interview. Things to consider: make sure you're familiar with the ground to be covered at the first interview. Think how you would answer questions of those that I've just gone through, and take them with you when you go to your court sittings and start making some notes based around those questions. Think what other questions you would ask of a candidate at first interview if you were on the panel, and then consider how you would answer them. Make a special effort to keep up to date with recent crime issues in your locality and nationally. You might well be asked for your views on some major issue which was in the media just a day or two before, so consider that in the week building up to your interview. Always try to give a balanced answer. Consider the issue of how the press report crime and court hearings, and think of what questions you might like answering. This might include something around the next steps in the appointment process, timescales if not already covered, but also try to think of something focused around the 6 key qualities and how you would need to approach your duties, and don't sound too presumptive that you are past the first hurdle, even if you get the feeling that you've done well at the interview. Okay, so we've now come to the end of the presentation. If you're interested in attending a magistrate training course to help you to prepare for the selection process, we run a 1-day magistrate course in Kent, just south of London. It's a fantastic 1-day course. And if you go along to www.magistratecourse.co.uk, you will find a massive information about the course that we run there that will prepare you fully for not just the application form, but for demonstrating the 6 key qualities, and also passing the first interview and the second interview, where we will go through a number of different case studies. Okay, as I say, my name's been Richard McMunn, and thank you very much for watching.